Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Simon. In this video, I'm going to cover the Unix administration grade lab called routing. And routing is a tricky lab for students. And it's kind of funny because what makes this lab so difficult is not really all the stuff you have to learn, because there's not a lot of new stuff you have to learn. There's really only three new things that you're going to learn, and they're really just simply editing or creating new files. And that's it. And even what you're putting in the files is just one line, and they're really small. So in terms of the new stuff that you have to do, there's not a lot, and it's very, very easy. The difficult part is understanding what those files do and what those lines do, because once you understand them, you'll have to know that you can't just put them on every single virtual machine that's going to work. You have to put them in the precise location. You have to make sure one file is being edited in the right virtual machine, and another file is being edited in the right virtual machine, and one file that's being created is in the right virtual machine. Otherwise, nothing is going to work. So the new stuff that you're learning is very easy. Technically, in terms of what you're practically learning, everything is really easy in this. And in my opinion, this is probably the easiest lab out of every single lab in this course in terms of what you're practically learning. But in terms of understanding the concepts and actually doing the labs, that's the tricky part for students. So that's what I'm going to do. And unlike the previous videos I've done, I'm actually going to go over the practice lab for routing with you. I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to explain it so that you understand it a lot better. And then once you understand this, it's going to make a lot more sense when I go through the grade lab for routing. So obviously, the grade lab's past due. You can't get any more marks for it. I'm making these videos so that you understand how to do this if it comes up on a test in the future. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. But with that said, let's get into the practice lab and just understand what we were trying to do. If you don't know what the whole purpose of this lab is, it is basically that we want to have SO1 connected to this blue network, as it always is, but we also wanted to have a new NIC card which is going to be connected to a yellow network. And it's just an internal network, it doesn't go to the internet, but we're going to have an SO2 virtual machine on the yellow network, so these two can easily ping each other. And obviously SO1 is still on the blue network, so SO1 can easily ping WO1. But we want to basically get WO1 and SO2 to communicate even though they're on different networks. And how we do that is we basically leverage the SO1 virtual machine so that he's basically going to be your man in the middle. This is going to be your post office. So when SO2 says, I'm going to ping WO1, he obviously has no idea how to get to WO1, so he's going to say, hey, I'm just going to send this ping to this port right here on SO1 and say, hey, can you figure out where it needs to go? And SO1 is going to be like, oh yeah, I'll send it out this port, which is the blue network, and give it to WO1. And you're going to set up WO1 so that he knows how to reply back to SO2 by basically sending his reply to this port on the SO1 virtual machine. So he's going to say, here's my reply. It goes here. SO1's like, I see the reply. It's meant for SO2. I'll send it out this port and get it to go to SO2. So basically, we're going to get WO1 and SO2 to talk to each other using SO1 as the middleman, or as I like to call the post office. And that's it. That's all you're doing for the practice lab in this routing practice lab. So remember when I said you're basically learning three new things and that's it? Well, you're probably going to be like, man, look at all this stuff right here. Like, this is just part A. Then there's part B right here. And then there's part C right here. Well, watch this. Part A set up the lab. When we go down until it hits B, right here, all of this stuff that I've just highlighted, there is absolutely nothing new that you haven't already learned from this lab right here, System Identity and Basic Networking. This is the third lab of the course. Everything I've highlighted is not going to be new to you. It's stuff we've already learned in the third lab of this course. So you're obviously going to want to go into this lab and make sure you remember some things. And right here, these two things are really important, and I don't memorize them, so I always go back to these. But you're going to want this up, and you're going to be putting this in, and you're going to be like, honestly, most of this stuff I understand because I know this. You should have already had your test by now. If you haven't, you're studying for your first test. So this is all stuff that you already know. So in terms of part A, this is stuff that is not new. So you don't even have to worry about this. This is easy. Then we get to part B. And all part B is trying to get you to do is understand what these lines mean. So the only command you're typing in is IP route, and the only reason why we're typing in IP route on the virtual machines is so that we can get this output, and then basically the teacher's just explaining what that output means so that you understand it. So if you ever get a Linux machine and you want to know how things are going to be routed throughout the networks, you can type in IP route and understand what you're looking at. So there's really nothing you have to practically do here that is necessarily going to benefit you for the grade lab. And then we get to part C, and this is where everything is new. And like I told you, there's only 3 new things. All you have to do is on the SO1 virtual machine, you're editing this file. And what this does is it basically says SO1, who I told you is our mailman, that's our post office, that's the middleman. He's the one forwarding the packets. So when SO2 wants to talk to WO1, SO2 sends it to SO1, and SO1 sends it to WO1. And when WO1 wants to talk to SO2, he is going to be sending it to SO1. So all we're doing with SO1 is we're editing this file, and we're basically modifying this line. This line's already in the file, but instead of a 1, it's a 0. And what this does is basically says, make sure that SO1 has the ability to forward packets. So basically it becomes a gateway, or you might consider it a router. But basically now it's going to be forwarding all packets. So that's all you're doing. You're enabling the SO1 virtual machine so that it can forward packets. It becomes a gateway. That's it. But that's really important to know, because when we go to this diagram, SO1 is our middleman. That's our gateway. We want SO1 to forward the packets. But in the grade lab, SO1 is not our middleman. We don't need it to forward packets because it's not connected to the yellow network. It's not going to do it. RO1 is now our middleman, so this is where we're going to want to make sure that this line that we just learned to modify in this file, we're going to be doing that now on RO1, not SO1. And then here's the new one that you have to, here's another new one. It says on SO2, we want to edit this file so that we have a new line saying gateway and an IP address. So all we're saying is for SO2, we want to make sure we edit the file so that it has a gateway, meaning that SO2 says my gateway, the person that's going to forward my packets to networks I don't know of, for example, the blue network, is going to be SO1. It's going to be this IP address, because SO2 has no idea how to get to WO1. So it says anytime I don't know where it's supposed to go, I'm just going to send it to this port right here on SO1 and let SO1 figure it out. So that is what you're basically doing right here when it says you're editing this file. So when you look at this, SO2 is going to be creating the gateway. We are definitely going to be doing that, but we're not going to do it for SO1. We're going to be doing it for this guy right here, right? But SO1 is going to want that same file now. Now we have to create this on SO1 as well and make sure that it's going to this port, because SO1 is going to want to connect to SO2, so it's going to need a gateway entry in its file, which is going to be the same file here, just instead of on SO2, it's going to be on SO1. And we're going to make sure that it's connected to this port, because again, this is the port that it goes into for RO1. These guys can see each other. They can send to each other. So SO1 knows if I'm going to go on the yellow network, I can only get to there through this port right here. So that's what we're doing right there. Right here. And then we restart these virtual machines. That's what it just says, restart the network or reboot the virtual machines. This is just telling you that this should show up now if you type in IP route, so you don't even have to do anything there. But then you go into WO1 and you create a new file. So this is the third new thing. This is the first new thing you learn. This is the second new thing you learn. And this is the third. That's it. And you create this new file, and what it does is it creates a static root, because remember, the WO1 virtual machine has the ability to go to the internet, right? So we can't just say, hey, if you don't know where you're going, make sure you go to this port, because we don't technically know things like how to get to Google. We rely on routing services. We rely on basically our router or ISP and whatever to basically go out to the internet and find this stuff. We rely on DNS services and stuff like that. So we can't simply say make a gateway entry into W01. We have to make a static route and say if specifically we're looking for this yellow network, go from W01 here to out here. We're basically saying make sure when we're looking specifically for the yellow network, which we're not connected to, we are going to go through SO1. So that's what we're doing right here. We're creating a new file that is going to be a static route, and we're basically saying anything destined for that yellow network is going to go out to this IP address, which is the SO1 blue IP address. But remember, now on the grade lab, we don't want it to go to SO1. So we're actually going to make sure that it's going to this port right here, 10.1.1.1, because this is the middleman now. So that's why I'm basically saying there's only 3 things that you have to learn. But if you don't understand why you're putting them where you're putting them, you're never going to figure out the grade lab for routing. So that's where it becomes really, really tricky. So now that hopefully you understand that, what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm just going to explain part B so that you understand what this is, and then we're actually going to do the grade lab, and you'll see it's not that bad. I'm not going to go super quick. I'm going to try to make sure that you understand it, but you'll see it doesn't take that long. So let's just read part B so that you understand what this is. This line is basically, all you're trying to do is understand what these lines mean. And these 2 lines basically mean the same thing, just for different networks. This line is a little bit different. So when you see a line that looks like this, which obviously also looks like this, and it looks like these 2, and it looks like this, when you type in IP route, you'll probably get something that looks like these. And what it basically says is any kind of packets going to this network is going to go out of the virtual machine's Ethernet 0 port, and that 0 port is going to have the IP address of this. Okay, so this says it's on SO2. All right, so when we go to SO2, SO2 only has an Ethernet 0 port, and we can see that the IP address is 10.2.1.30, right? So if I go down here again, you'll see anything going on this network, and this is the yellow network, if you didn't know, 10.2.1.0 is right here, 10.2.1.0. So anything going on the yellow network is going to go out of the Ethernet 0 port on SO2, and that IP address is 10.2.1.30. So now on SO1 is saying anything going to this network, which is the yellow network, is going to go out of SO1's Ethernet 1 port, and the Ethernet 1 port on SO1 is going to have the IP address of 10.2.1.20, which it does. Same thing right here, it says on SO1, anything going out of 10.1.1.0, which is the blue network, is going to go out of the Ethernet 0 port on SO1, which has an IP address of 10.1.1.20. So that's all it means. Basically, this is the destined network. Anything on this network is going to go out of this port, which has an IP address of this. That's all you need to know for each of these lines. This is a little bit different. It basically says anytime it's going to a network that's not listed above. So if it's something that they're not familiar with or not connected to, it is going to basically go out of or go towards this IP address through this port. So for example, SO2, when it wants to connect to W01, it's going to say default anytime it doesn't know where to go, send it out of ETH0, but go to right here. Go to this IP address and let this IP address figure it out. Okay, so that's all it means. It's basically, this is saying, if you don't know where to go, make sure you go to the middleman and make sure you go to the right port, right? Because remember, SO2, don't put in this port. Even though it's on SO1, SO2 doesn't actually know how to get to this port. You have to make sure it goes to the port it knows. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's all you needed to know for part B, and that's it. If you have any questions, let me know, but it's pretty simple, and you don't even have to really know this for the grade lab. You just should know it because it's good information. So let's actually do the grade lab, and I will do everything that is basically in part A and we can probably skip part B and everything in part C, and you'll understand hopefully how this works. So what we're going to do is we have to create this. So the first thing I'm going to do is part A, which is just creating the topology. And when I do this, SO2 should connect to SO1 or RO1, sorry. So they should be able to ping each other. SO1 and RO1 should be able to ping each other, but just this port and this port. Same thing with SO2. This port should be able to ping this, but not ping this. SO1 should be able to ping this guy, but not this guy. SO1 and RO1, their blue ports, should be able to ping WO1 as well, but WO1 should not be able to ping this port or SO2. SO1 should not be able to ping this port or SO2, and that's just part A. It's just stuff, like I said, that you learned in system identity and basic networking. So this should be very, very easy for you. So let's go into VirtualBox Manager, delete any old virtual machines you have, and let's import a new appliance. Here we go. Sit next, and I would suggest just leave it as is because we're going to have 4 virtual machines running, so you might as well just import as is because you don't want to go crazy. One thing you need to know is you are definitely going to need the DVD ISO image because we're going to have to install traceroute on SO2, and SO2 is not some virtual machine that has connection to the internet, so it needs to find the traceroute software or the program from somewhere, and it's going to find it from DVD ISO. Okay, so make sure you have this with the OVA file, otherwise you can't complete this lab. So what I'm going to do is boot these guys up, and you're going to say right away, wait a minute, we're supposed to clone SO1. I'm going to show you why I boot up SO1 before I clone it. Basically, we have to update the host file. So instead of updating the host file in this, and then this, and then this, I like to do it just once and then clone it so it makes it easier and you save some time. But you don't have to. It's just something that I like doing. If I can save the time, I will. So here we go. We are pretty much all good to go. So I'll just do WO1 first because after this we won't have to do a lot until the very end. So I'm going to log in as Alice using user pass. And once it loads up, go to Applications, System Tools, and Terminal. Log in as root, so admin pass. And then say vi/etc hosts. And hit enter, and you're going to see there's a bunch of entries already. What we're going to do is we're going to add. So right here it says SO1. We're going to say SO1 blue because the 10.1.1.20 port on SO1 is on the blue network. Then we're going to say 10.2.1. Oh, you know what? I apologize. 1 second. We can leave it as SO1 because remember SO1's on its own now. We have a router. So we're going to say 10.1.120. That's fine. SO1. We're going to create one for RO1 blue and RO1 yellow now. So we're going to say 10.1.1.1 RO1 blue. And I got that because of this right here. 10.1.1.1 for RO1. Okay. Then we're going to say 10.2.1.1, and that's going to be RO1 yellow. And now we're going to say SO2, which is 10.2.1.30. So we're going to say 10.2.1.30, and this one is SO2. And then save it. And just say service network restart, just to make sure that it actually picks up everything in the host file. So now we can go to SO1, and we're going to do basically the same thing. So login as root, admin pass, and what you're going to do is say vi/etc hosts, hit enter. We already have W1 and SO1 in there. Leave them as is. We're just going to add 10.1.1.1, which is going to be RO1 blue, and 10.2.1.1, which is going to be RO1 yellow, and then 10.2.1.30, which is going to be SO2. And again, I'm just looking at this diagram. The yellow port on RO1 is 10.2.1.1, which is why I put that there. And the blue port was 10.1.1.1, so I put that there. and then SO2 was 10.2.1.30, so I put that there. And just remember, the host file is basically an alias file. So when you say ping, you don't have to type in the IP address. You're saying ping SO2, and SO2 will automatically get translated to 10.2.1.30. So that's all a host file is. So we're going to say good, we like that, save it, and then we can actually shut this down because we have to clone it. So say shutdown -h now, and we will see what it looks like when it's done. All right, good. So now what you're going to do is you're going to click on SO1, you're going to right click and click clone. And let's say R01. If you're not in this, make sure you're saying expert mode, but make sure it looks like this. You're going to say R01, let's say full clone everything, reinitialize the Mac. We want to make sure we do that. Clone it. It doesn't take too long. There we go. Let's do it again. So let's clone because we need SO2 as well. So we're going to say full clone everything, SO2, reinitialize the Mac, and clone. Now what we have to make sure we do is this. SO1 and W1 are fine for their networks. We're going to leave them as is. But for R01, we're going to go to settings. We're going to go to network. And this is fine. The first network, internal network, can be blue. But we want a new internal network, and we want to call it yellow. And then on SO2, instead of having the blue network, we want it to be yellow. And now you can start them up. If you're on a slow computer, start them up one at a time, but my computer's decent, so I'm going to start them all just to basically avoid any problems and speed up the process. So we'll just wait for these guys to load. Okay, I'll put R01 down here, put SO2 up here. Now the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to work with R01. And I'm going to sign in as root, and admin pass will be the password. Now if you look, we have the host ID or host name as SO1. We want to get rid of that. We want to make sure it's R01. So the first thing we're going to do is say vi etc sysconfig network. And we can see right here we have a host name, so we're going to change that to R01, and then we're going to save it. And if you want to know how I figured that out, it's in the lab system identity and basic networking. So just so you know, that's where you get it from if you're confused about that, but that's how we do it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to remove two files. So let's go into system identity and basic networking, because I don't memorize these files that we have to remove, but we do have to remove these two, because we want to make sure that we can configure Ethernet 0, and we want to make sure anything that's in there right now that's technically from SO1 gets removed. So what we're going to do is say this, remove, and let's clear, remove /etc udev rules.d 70-persistent-net.rules, enter. Now we're going to do the next line. So we just did this line, now we're going to do this line. So remove etc sysconfig network scripts if config-ethernet 0. Okay, perfect. Once you've done that, reboot. So shutdown -r now, enter, and go to SO2 and basically do the same thing. So we're going to say root admin pass. First thing I'm going to do is say vi, and we're going to edit the host name. So /etc /sysconfig /network. And let's change this to SO2. Save it. There we go. And same thing. So remove, and first one is right here. We're going to say etc /udev /rules-d, then 70-persistent.net.rules, enter, then remove etc sysconfig network-scripts if config-eth0, enter, shutdown-r now. So all this stuff is stuff you learn in system identity and basic networking. So there's nothing new at all. So there's nothing that you really have to sit there and say, I don't understand. This is all too confusing to me. Hopefully you know this, but if you don't, you'll definitely want to make sure you go through system identity and basic networking again, because you're going to need to. But let's go back to R01 since it's loaded. And as we can see, we are now R01, so that's perfect. But now we have to actually edit the ETH0 file so that it has an IP address and we know how to use it. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to say vi etc sysconfig network scripts if config -eth0. So that's, remember that file right here that we deleted? We're now going to edit it and create a new one, and we're going to do what we want with it. So we're going to say enter, and now we're going to put this in. We're going to say device equals eth0. On boot equals yes, because we want to make sure that this always loads when it boots up. Boot proto equals none. That's your DHCP. It's basically saying automatically get an IP address from the DHCP server, but we don't want that. We want a static IP, so we're saying none. Then we're going to say IP adder equals 10.1.1.1 because we're on R01, and ETH0, ETH0 right here has this address right there. So that's where I'm getting that information from. And then we're going to say net mask equals 255.255.255.0, which is basically this network. We have the prefix of 24, so we know that net mask should be 255.255.255.0. And when you're done that, just save it. Say if, well, we'll do that after. Just hit up, and instead of ETH0, let's edit ETH1 now. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to clear this. So basically, we're going to be now doing this guy. So VI, you're going to make sure it's ETH1 now, not ETH0. Hit enter. Insert. We're going to say device is ETH1. On boot, yes. Boot proto, none. IP adder. This one's going to be 10.2.1.1 because now we're doing ETH1, which is the yellow network on R01. And net mask 255.255.255.0. Save it. And now we can do this. We're going to say if up ETH0, and we wait. And it doesn't really tell us anything, but basically it booted up the ETH0 port. Do the same thing for ETH1. We wait. And if you really want to make sure that it's working, then you can say service network restart, and you'll see that everything will be okay. So it's booting up ETH0, okay, there's no problems. Booting up ETH1, okay, no problems. You are pretty much good to go for now. So we're going to move on to the next part, which is SO2. We're going to make sure that SO2 now has everything that it needs to basically have an IP address so it can ping R01 on this port right here, and we want to make sure that the network is restarted so it actually recognizes the new IP address that we're going to give it. So we're going to say root admin pass. As you can see, we are SO2 now, which is great. So we're just going to say vi etc. Same thing we did for R01, sysconfig network-scripts if config-ethernet port 0. Hit enter. Device equals ETH0. On boot equals yes. Boot proto equals none. IP adder, in this case, is going to be 10.2.1.30 because that's what this port is right here. We're on SO2. Net mask equals 255.255.255.0. And we're good for now. And same thing, we're going to say if up ETH0. And like I always do, I'm going to say service network restart just to make sure there's no problems and I get the actual okay. And I do. So now, if everything works, I should be able to ping R01 yellow. And look at that. I can. But I should not be able to ping R01 blue, SO1, or W01. So let's try that just to make a point. So instead of R01 yellow, we're going to say blue. Doesn't work. Let's say SO1. doesn't work. W01 doesn't work. Even let's try the internet. This is Google's IP. Doesn't work. So the only thing that SO2 can connect to is R01 yellow, which is this port. Everything else it can't. And that's what we want for part A. We want to make sure that SO2 can at least get this guy connected with in terms of pinging. So now we have R01 here. Let's just make sure we can do the same. So we're going to say ping-C3 and we're going to say SO2. That worked. Now let's say SO1. That worked. Let's say W01. That worked. Now we just want to make sure it doesn't have connection to the internet. So we're going to put Google's address in here. Network unreachable. Perfect. So you're going to be like, perfect. R01's done. We don't have to do anything. Well, no, we have to make sure that it can forward all the packets. Remember, we learned something down here that allowed us to forward packets. So it's basically going to be our router. So what we're going to do is go on R01 and we're going to edit this file called syscontrol.conf. And it's already a massive file. You don't have to really edit anything except this one line right here. net.ipv4.ip_forward equals 0. We don't want it to be 0, we want it to be 1. 0 means disabled or off. 1 means enabled or on, so we want to make sure it's forwarding, so we're going to change it to 1 so that it is enabled or it's on. So save it, and then just to make sure that everything is good, we're just going to reboot the system. So shutdown -R now. Okay, good. So here, remember it says turn SO1 into a router, and it told us to do this on SO1. I did it on R01 because here R01 is our middleman, not SO1. So that's where a lot of students are like, I don't understand, it's not working. Why not? It's because you're most likely making SO1 a router, but SO1 is not connected to the yellow network, so it doesn't make sense in this diagram. So there we go. It's all up, and believe it or not, that's all you have to do for R01. It's done. So you might sit there and say, I thought this would be really complicated, but it's not. So let's go into SO2 now. Now SO2 is not done because we have to tell SO2 that R01 right here, this port guy here, Ethernet port 1, is going to be our gateway. So this is how we're going to do that. We're going to say clear vi etc sysconfig network. Remember, this is exactly where we edited the host name. We're going to add a new line, and we're going to say gateway, and we're going to say our gateway is this port right here. So make sure you're doing this and not down here because SO2 doesn't know how to get here. This is the only place it knows how to get to, so this is the drop-off point. So we're going to say 10.2.1.1. Save it when you're done. And then if you want, you can probably just do service network restart. But if you just want to play it safe, because we got time, we can say shutdown now. So let's minimize that and let's bring SO1 back. Okay, so with SO1, we are basically going to do the same thing, because SO1 needs a gateway so it can get on the yellow network because it's not connected. So we're going to say SO1 is going to say that R01 is going to be the middleman, but instead of this port, because it doesn't know how to connect to the yellow port, SO1 is going to use this port as the gateway. So let's do that. We're going to say vi etc sysconfig and then network, edit that, new line, say gateway equals, make sure it's this IP address, so 10.1.1.1. Save it, and just reboot it. You'll have time. But now it's time to go to W01, and you're going to be like, why? Well, when SO2, like I told you, sends a ping to W01, it's going to send it to R01 and say, can you send it to W01? And it will send it to W01, but you will still get an error. And the reason why is that W01, unless you configure it, won't know how to reply back. So we have to make sure W01 has a way to reply back by basically creating a static route. Now you're going to be like, well, why don't we just edit that one file on W01 and say gateway 10.1.1.1? Well, W01 already has a gateway going to the internet. So it's going to be very confusing. What we want to do is make sure that we're saying specifically anytime we're going to the yellow network, any packets going to 10.2.1.0 need to make sure it goes to this port and not into the internet, because the internet isn't going to find this. So it's a little bit different with W01, and you can see that in the lab. In the lab, I showed you how to do this for SO2 and SO1 in the grade lab. But for W01, we're going to create a static route, which is going to be what this file is. It's going to be the exact same file name, and we're going to be changing it a little bit, but it's going to look like this. It's going to say basically anything going to this network is going to go via, and instead of 10.1.1.20, we're going to have 10.1.1.1. So that way, we're not messing up the internet. Basically, the internet is still going to be going through our gateway. Everything's going to be normal, but anything that's going to this specific network will not go out to the internet. It's going to go through this IP address, which is this IP address, which is this port. So it's a little bit different, but this is going to allow W1 to maintain an internet connection. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to say vi etc. Let me just make sure I'm doing it right. Should be route-eth1. Route-eth1. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so sysconfig network-scripts and then route.eth1. And we're doing eth1 just so you know, because we're saying this is the port that we're going to be using for the static route. Okay, so that's why it's eth1 this time. Hit enter, input this. You're going to say anything going to 10.2.1.0, 24, is going to go via the 10.1.1.1 address. So anything going to the yellow network is going to go out here into this IP address right here. And that's what this looks like right here. That's the yellow network. That's exactly what I put via, but this address is different because this time we're going to this IP address. So when you're ready, save it. And like I said, just reboot it. And believe it or not, you're done. The only thing you have to do is just make sure that you download the trace route on SO2. So I guess while this is loading, we can do that really quickly. So go to devices, make sure you have your CentOS DVD ISO ready. So if you have to, go choose disk, click here, log in, mount it. So you're going to say mount dev cd-rom, say yum install traceroute. Yep, we're good. Now that W01 is loaded, let's test and make sure everything is working. And this might take a long time because we have to do it on a lot of the on every single one of these virtual machines. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put one guy here, SO2 is there, RO1 is there, and then let's take SO1 here, bring him down here. Okay, so we have these guys all ready to go. Let's start pinging. So I guess let's start with W01. We'll make it simple. So let's just do ping C3, and we're going to do the internet. So 8.8.8.8. That's working. So that's perfect. So now let's say ping SO1. That's working. Perfect. So now let's try ping RO1 blue, and it should work. Good. But now here's the real test. We are going to say ping RO1 yellow. And it works, which means that we should be able to say ping SO2, and it works. So W01 is working perfectly, and that's probably a good sign that everything else is, but just check to make sure. So SO1 should not have access to the internet. So if I say ping C3 8.8.8.8, it should say network unreachable. That's perfect. But everything else should work perfectly. So if I say SO2, it works. If I say R01 yellow, it works. If I say R01 blue, it works. And if I say W01, it works. Let's try it on SO2. Ping C3, we don't want it to work with the internet. That's good. R01 yellow, should, because it's on the same network. R01 blue now, that's good. SO1, and then W01. So right there, I know everything's working because all of these are all connecting. They're all going through R01 already. So even though we've tried these three, they should have no problem with this. But we're still going to try. So we're going to say ping C3. Remember, internet should not work for this one, only W01. It doesn't. That's perfect. Now we're going to say SO1. That's good. SO2. W01. And then if you want, you can ping yourself. You can say basically R01 yellow, and it should work. There should be no reason why it doesn't. And blue, and there we go. So everything worked perfectly. So now all you have to do is run the script. So I'm going to show you what the script looks like when you download it and you run it. You're going to run it on W01 to prove that W01 is working and has access to the internet. And you're also going to send it to SO2 to prove that SO2 can connect to everything except for the internet. So you're going to have to run it in two places. But that's all you have to do. This is it. So it's not too bad. I mean, yes, it took about an hour to do. Let me just see. Does it tell me how long it's been? 41 minutes. So it took us less than 40 minutes, which is really, really good. But think about it. That's me explaining it. Once you've done it a couple times, you'll see it takes no time at all. But it's really understanding what you're doing that's the tough part. It's not the doing process. The doing process is almost mindless. So let's just go in, get that script, and run it. So we're going to go to Dropbox. Go down to, you'll see routing. There's only one zip file, but you're going to need to unzip it and send it to SO2, but run it on both like I told you. So now as there, we can minimize this. Let's just go CD downloads. Let's unzip it. So unzip host. Okay. So if you want, we can run it right away. Say Firefox W01 and see what we get. So I'm just going to load this up. So it says host name W01. Okay. That's good. Routing configuration, this is all in there, so that is perfect. Host file, that's all in there, so that's perfect. And you're going to get this, does it work, and it's going to be blank, but this is for SO1 only. So that's okay that it's blank. So this is perfect. This is exactly what you want for W01's output. So let's just go down here, and let's just send this file, scp host.sh to root of 10.2.1.30, and the good news is now that we have routing, it's going to be able to send this information even though it's not on the same network, which is kind of neat. And we're just going to say yes, say admin pass. Now it's sent it to SO2, and if I go to SO2, clear this, go into my temp folder and list it, we can see it's there. So that is really, really cool. That is kind of like, yeah, we did it. It's a good feeling. So let's just run that script. Host, there we go. Let's send it back. So this is now going to be SO1. Root at 10.1.1.10 into the temp folder as well. Admin pass. There we go. Let's go here, cd temp. We can see that it's right there, the SO2 report. So if I say Firefox SO2, there we go. So host name is SO2, that's perfect. Routing config, we can see this here, which is perfect. And this looks less than this, but remember, this is the yellow network, which is the only thing it's on, so everything else is not going to have any idea where it is. It's just going to send it to the 10.2.1.1 yellow port on the R01 virtual machine. So this is okay that this is smaller. This guy is connected to the blue network, it's connected to the internet. There's so many things here, so this is normal that it's bigger. And then you have the host file, and this host file should look very similar to this. It doesn't have to be exactly the same in terms of the order, but it should look like this in terms of all of these should be there. And then now you can say, does it work? SO1 only, and it says trace route. And it shows that when it comes down to pinging 10.1.1.10, which is going to be W01, it works. It basically says, okay, it went to yellow, and then from yellow it went to W01. So that is perfect. So good job if you did that. If you have any questions, like I said, let me know. Give me a comment and I'll do my best to help you as much as I can. But good luck on your tests that are coming up, and I will see you on the next video. Take it easy, guys. Bye.